and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate and today I'm going to be doing a video that I've always loved watching but had never done before myself, and that is a 5-star predictions video. I really enjoy watching other people take a look at books that they think might really work for them and then looking back later on to see if they actually did and if they do know their own taste. I feel like I know my own taste reasonably well, but I've been pretty disappointed before by some books that were highly anticipated by me. And I picked 10 books that I think I will love, but it's a pretty wide range of genres, and some of these are slightly risky picks. So we'll see how it works out for me. So the first 5 that I will talk about are books that are already out, but that I have had on my TBR and that I think I will love. The second 5 that I will talk about are books that are coming out in 2022. Many of these are very anticipated reads for me, so hopefully those ones will work really well for me as well. The first one that I have picked from my list of books that are already out is The Guns Above by Robin Bennis. This had been highly recommended by Sarah over at Bright and Bookish. I will link their channel in the description. And this was described as a steampunk story that follows an airship captain who has basically newly been made captain of her own ship. Women are not seen as being very capable in commanding airships or in the military in general. And she ends up getting paired up with this sort of annoying, I believe he's an aristocrat who ends up tagging along on her ship. Josette is just very entertaining. It's steampunk at its finest. So I love stories about kind of women in leadership roles, especially kind of more military based, so I'm really excited for that. I really enjoy a lot of steampunk that I've picked up, so I think I will like it on that end, and it feels like it could be an enemies to friends. I don't know if there's romance in here, but it could be a fun. I really enjoy the banter you tend to get when you have an enemies to friends or enemies to lovers type situation. So regardless of whether or not there's any romance in here, I feel like the banter between Josette and this aristocrat could be really fun. So I'm really, really looking forward to this one. So here's hoping this one does not disappoint me. The next one I will talk about is The Plague Birds by Jason Sanford. Plague Birds is a sci-fi. It looks like it's going to be sort of dystopian, where you have these people known as plague birds that have combined their human bodies with this sort of symbiotic AI technology, and they serve as judge, jury, and executioner after the collapse of civilization. It's the basic premise that I know about it. The main character, Krista's mother, was killed by one of these plague birds, and she's always been afraid of them, but ends up having to become one herself in order to save her father and her village. And then she kind of gets entangled into this conspiracy as she learns more about her abilities as a plague bird. So this sounds really intriguing. I think it was nominated for either a Nebula or a Hugo. I don't remember which one for this year, which is what originally caught my attention for it. I love Judge Dredd. I love the incorporation of AI with sci-fi. I think it does some really interesting things. So I am very curious to check this one out. I think this has the most mixed reviews of the books that I picked for the ones that were already out. So we'll see how this one works out for me, but I am hoping that I love it. The next book is both a book that I already own and an author that I have loved and also have DNF'd in the past. But I feel like the more I read from this author, the more I love. So I have very, very high hopes for this one. And it is Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And this is described as an extraordinary new space opera about humanity on the brink of extinction and how one man's discovery will save or destroy us all. So Idris, the main character, basically was part of this group that was engineered in order to stop these alien aggressors 50 years before this story takes place. Once the fight with the aliens was over, he basically became obsolete, so he works with a crew on a salvage ship, and then they end up discovering something that's been abandoned out in space that might indicate that these aliens are coming back and might be a threat again. So it's basically Idris and his crew kind of racing around the galaxy trying to figure out what's going on and what the implications are. And this one really appealed to me because I love space operas. I love ragtag crews. I mean, going back to watching Firefly when I was younger, which I absolutely adored. It's just, there's something about that group of misfits banding together that works really, really well for me. So I have very high hopes for this. I loved Tchaikovsky's Guns of the Dawn, Elder Race. I think basically everything I've picked up by him except for Shadows of the Apt and a novella, The Ironclads, both of which didn't work very well for me. So I feel like this might really fit into the wheelhouse of kind of character relationships and hopefully the level of sci-fi that works very well for me. As I've mentioned previously, if it gets super technical, I'm not as into it, but I feel like this one might fit kind of my box of sci-fi, so I'm very excited to get to this one. The next one is one that I recently picked up, and it is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I didn't know anything about this author. I know that he has narrated Will White's Cradle series for the audiobooks, and I've heard he's an amazing narrator. It just so happened that this book showed up on like an Audible recommendations list for me because I do love fantasy stories. This one is supposed to be sort of a cozy fantasy, which I don't think we've gotten much of. We've seen plenty of cozy mysteries, but I like the idea of a cozy fantasy. And the basic premise here is that one of the main characters, Viv, is an orc barbarian who basically has turned her back on fighting in order to open her own coffee shop and ends up getting entangled in the criminal underbelly of the city that she picks to open her business. So it's described as a hot cup of fantasy slice of life with a dollop of romantic froth, and that sounds fantastic. I feel like I will really enjoy this, and it's relatively short because it's only 300 pages. For fantasy, that's pretty damn good. And I have the Kindle and I also have the Audible version of this. So since he's been recommended as such a great narrator and he does narrate his own book here, I am definitely planning on focusing on the audio of it. I may pick up or I may read it on my Kindle while I'm listening with an immersion read, but we'll see. It just sounds very cozy and fun. Then the last book that I have on the list of books that are already out for my 5-star predictions is Sorcerer to the Crown by Zen Cho. I have previously adored some of Zen Cho's writing, particularly Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water, which is a wuxia novella that Cho wrote, I think in 2020, and was a 5-star read for me, so I have very high hopes for this. I just really enjoy the humor and kind of the world building that Cho does. And this one is particularly interesting to me because it follows the main character, Zacharias Wise, is a former slave in a sort of twist on Victorian society. He has basically raised himself up to be a powerful magician, and in fact is the Sorcerer Royal of the Unnatural Philosophers, which is a highly respected organization of magicians in Britain and basically is tasked with finding out why magic is disappearing. It ends up teaming up with a woman who is also very gifted with magic, and they end up working together to try and figure out what's happening. This was highly recommended by Chatty over at the Mad Chatter. I will link her channel down below. She's relatively new, but she has great book recommendations, very active in some of the bookish related Discord. So we are actually going to be doing a buddy read for this in the Shelf Space Discord if anyone would like to join us. Shameless plug for that. I will leave a link for that Discord down below. This kind of gave me vibes of the same magic in British society category as Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and A Marvelous Light, which is more romance-centric than I think this will be, but I am excited to see this blending. I do really love historical British society plus magic, so we'll see how this one works out for me. All right, moving into the 5-star predictions that are for books that are coming up in 2022. I am going to be listing these in the order that they are being released. It's basically one a month from April to August. The first one is Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee. This one is a bit of a stretch for me. It is a contemporary thriller. The story is focused on a heist that's being developed with a bunch of Chinese Americans who are intent on stealing back Chinese treasures that have basically been stolen by Western museums. And I love heist stories. This one sounds like it could be really interesting, very character focused. So I have very high hopes that this will work. It's a bit of a stretch because I'm pretty picky about the heist stories that I enjoy, but I do like character focus. So I'm hopeful this one will be very fun for me. I kind of like the Killmonger aspect Killmonger from Black Panther aspect that the synopsis really makes me think of. So we'll see how it works out. And that one is being released on April 5th. Next new release is The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray. This one is a historical mystery that is pulling in a ton of Jane Austen characters. Is a villain from Pride and Prejudice. Is murdered at this house party with a bunch of other Jane Austen characters in attendance, many of whom do not love him. So it has like Agatha Christie plus many Austen vibes, so I am looking forward to this one. I actually haven't read all of Austen's books yet. I have previously DNF'd Emma, and I know several of the characters from Emma show up here. I also haven't read Persuasion, which might come up, and I'm trying to think if there's any other Austen books I haven't read. I think that's it. So I might try and get to those before I pick this one up, but we'll see what I get to. Claudia Gray has previously written some Star Wars stories that I really enjoyed. I like her writing style, and I really am a sucker for Austen retellings. I adore Pride and Prejudice. I really enjoyed Sense and Sensibility, so I'm hoping that this one will be a fun retelling that brings in some of the things that I love about Austen and some of the more mystery elements that I love about Christie. So very, very high hopes for this one. That one is being released on May 3rd. This next one is a bit of a gamble, and that is The Daughter of Red Winter by Ed McDonald. This is a new series by this author. I have previously read Blackwing, which is the first book in his Ravensmark trilogy. Blackwing I really enjoyed. I did have some gripes about the main character, and it was a little more grim than I usually like, but I loved his writing style, and I loved the way that he described battle scenes. I think he's spectacular at that. So I'm really interested in this next one. The Daughter of Red Winter, I'm just going to read the synopsis because I don't think I can do it justice. Rain can see, and more importantly, speak to the dead. It's a wretched gift and a death sentence that has her doing many dubious things to save her skin. Seeking refuge with the deluded cult is her latest bad survival-related decision. But her rare act of kindness, rescuing an injured woman in the snow, is even worse. Because the woman has escaped from Red Winter, the fortress monastery of a group of warrior magicians who answer to no king and who will stop at nothing to retrieve what she's stolen. A battle, a betrayal, and a horrific revelation forces Rain to enter Red Winter, It becomes clear that her ability might save an entire nation. Pity she might have to die for that to happen. That just sounds so fun. I mean, also super grim, but I like the concept a lot as far as being able to speak to the dead and a character who is getting herself in bad situations while she's trying to survive. So that just sounds really interesting to me. And like I said, I really liked McDonald's writing style in Ravensmark. I just wasn't as sold on some of the character work, at least in the first book. So we'll see how this one turns out for me, but I am definitely looking forward to trying this one. And Daughter of Red Winter comes out on June 28th. The next book is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a horror novel that is a Edgar Allan Poe retelling. Gotta remember which one it is. Yeah, so this is basically related to Fall of the House of Usher. Premise for What Moves the Dead is that a retired soldier receives word that one of their childhood friends is dying, and they race back to this friend's ancestral home in the remote countryside. They basically have to figure out what the heck is happening in this house, as there's weird, like, fungi growth everywhere, and their friend is wandering the halls, basically insensible, and so they have to work with a couple others to figure out what's going on. And this one sounds incredibly creepy. I have adored T. Kingfisher's writing in sort of more not generic, sort of more fantasy-focused collections. Like, I loved their story in Mythic Dream, and I'm really enjoyed the fantasy romance Sword Heart. So this is slightly risky in that I like certain subsets of horror, but not all horror. And I have a lot of faith in Kingfisher's writing style, and I'm very curious to see what she does with a Poe retelling. So I am very much looking forward to this, and the cover for this is incredibly creepy. But if it's as fungi focused as the synopsis makes it sound like, it seems like this cover is kind of perfect for it. And What Moves the Dead is going to be released on July 12th. We are now to the final new release and final book on this 5-star predictions list, and that is going to be The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. So for this one, I think I'm just going to read the synopsis real quick just to give you an idea of what this is about. So, Hart is a marshal tasked with patrolling the strange and magical wilds of Tanria. It's an unforgiving job, and Hart's got nothing but time to ponder his loneliness. Mercy never has a moment to herself. She's been single-handedly keeping Birdsall and Son undertakers afloat in defiance of sullen jerks like Hart, who seems to have a gift for showing up right when her patience is thinnest. After yet another exasperating run-in with Mercy, Hart finds himself penning a letter addressed simply to a friend. Much to his surprise, an anonymous letter comes back in return, and a tentative friendship is born. If only Hart knew he's been bearing his soul to the person who infuriates him most, Mercy. As the dangers from Tanria grow closer, so do the unlikely correspondence. But can their blossoming romance survive the fated discovery that their pen pals are their worst nightmares, each other? So this sounds like it could be really fun. I do like romance, particularly romance that brings in speculative elements. I think that could be a lot of fun. I don't love miscommunication trope, which seems like it's going to be a big thing here, but the world has me very intrigued, and I think I could end up really enjoying this one. One of the early reviews for this that I saw compared it to Howl's Moving Castle, and so that had a lot of appeal for me. So we'll see how it works out, but I definitely think this could end up being in the category of fantasy romance that I love. So fingers crossed. This, The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, is going to be coming out on August 23rd. So that is my list of 5 books that are already out that I think I will love, and 5 that are not out yet but I think could be new favorites. And we will see at the end of this year how I end up feeling about them. Let me know if any of these are books that you have already read or books that you're excited about for the new releases, and I will see you in the next one.